Welcome, welcome. Thanks so much for joining me this evening. Let me stop sharing my screen for just a moment. There we go. So welcome. I'm Deborah Loader. I'm a certified transformational health and life coach. And during this time of uncertainty and feeling like everything is out of your control, I invite you to consider the possibility that there are many things within your control. And one of those is to keep your health and your immune system as strong as you can. Today, we're going to talk about the case against sugar. And one of the things that sugar can do is compromise your immune system. And this is serious, right? But as you learn and build your awareness, you can take control back and not let sugar rule your life or ruin your life. So whether you're watching live, we're going to be together about half an hour. So whether you're watching live or watching the replay, you can ask me questions as they come up. You can type those in the chat. You can message me. You can email me. Whatever works for you. And at the end of the presentation, I will have a slide with all my contact information on it. All right? All right, great. So let's get started. I'm going to share my screen again. Okay. Now, sugar comes in many forms beyond just the white powder that we often associate it with. And some are claimed to be better than others, and some have names you probably wouldn't even recognize on an ingredient label. The whole subject of sugar in the health industry is confusing. Some things that people might say is it's okay in moderation, or your body isn't designed to digest sugars. Sugar-free products are always healthy. Artificial sweeteners are worse. You need sugar for energy, or sugar is addictive. All of these are common claims to do with sugar, and they oppose one another. One thing is for certain, we are consuming more sugar in our diets than we ever have before. According to the United States Department of Agriculture, that's the USDA, the average American consumes 150 to 170 pounds of refined sugars every year. Now compare this, in the early 1800s, we consumed about 4 to 6 pounds a year. And in the early 1900s, it was already 90 pounds, but now we're at 150 to 170 pounds. And you probably think that can't be right, because that's a lot of sugar. And you're right, but that figure is correct, 150 to 170 pounds a year. Now that translates to 1/4 to 1/2 pound, or 30 to 60 teaspoons of sugar every day. And it's hard to believe that you're capable of that, right? But keep in mind, you're not just consuming the sugar in your coffee or in baked goods. It's hidden in the majority of the foods that you probably eat regularly. Sort of like the sugar hide and seek, right? And sugar is added into foods that you wouldn't even expect. Now, some of those include, and you may have heard of some of these, ketchup and barbecue sauces, tomato sauces, marinades, salad dressings, yogurts, breads, protein bars, peanut butter, soup, canned fruits, cereals and crackers, oatmeal, frozen dinners, and so many more. And this list does not even include the obvious culprits of, soda and cookies and ice cream. But, these are just some of the many surprising ways that sugar will sneak into our diets. So the aliases for sugar. And one of the main reasons you may not recognize all the sugar that you have in your diet because it very rarely will just say sugar on the ingredient list on the food that you buy. Instead, you might see words like dextrose or maltose or glucose, fructose, corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, corn sweetener and sucrose, sorbitol, sorghum syrup, agave nectar, carbitol, evaporated cane juice, galactose, inversol, rice malt, sorbitol, or nectars. And as I'm sure you would guess, there's even more than what I included on this list. And a few tips in identifying sugars is looking for words that end with OSE or IDES, words that end with that, and examining the entire ingredients list, as often there's more than one type of sugar in a product. So, okay, what's the big deal anyway, right? If sugar is already in all the food that we eat, then why should we care, right? It's not like everyone's sick yet. But the problem with excess sugar consumption is that more health issues, that actually most of the health issues don't manifest immediately. And if they do, they're not usually recognized as being caused by our diets. Mental illness and behavioral problems are often attributed to other sources beyond diet. And allergies and arthritis and migraines are explained by our environment, stress levels and our response to medication. Immune disorders and degenerative diseases, diabetes and cancer take time to diagnose. And most people aren't grabbing their food journals, at that point to search for the connection. However, there's more research being conducted on the effects of sugar on human health every day. But let me tell you, it's not looking too good for sugar's case. So Sugar 101. And to best understand how sugar is so dangerous, you must first know what it's made of. Now, before sugar leaves the digestive tract, it's composed of two simple sugars, glucose and fructose. Now, glucose is an important energy source and easy to obtain. And if we're not consuming it in our diets, our bodies will produce it, right? Simple as that. However, fructose is different. Our bodies do not produce much of it, and quite frankly, there is no need for it to do so. In fact, there's no proven physiological need for fructose at all. Now we're going to have a little spotlight on insulin here. So the relationship between sugar and insulin resistance has become a crucial topic of discussion. And insulin is one of the most important hormones in our body. It's responsible for directing glucose into the cells to be used for energy. However, when our cells no longer respond to insulin, our body receives the message that it needs to produce more. And in response, the pancreas makes more insulin. But over time, the insulin is unable to keep up with that demand, and the blood sugar is no longer able to be maintained. And this is known as insulin resistance. Now, insulin resistance is thought to be a big contributor to many diseases, including but not limited to type 2 diabetes, obesity, metabolic syndrome. And metabolic syndrome is a group of risk factors that can raise your risk for heart disease, diabetes, and stroke. And it's linked to obesity and connected with insulin resistance. And the other disease that insulin resistance is connected to is cardiovascular disease. And even after these diseases develop, elevated blood sugar remains an ongoing problem. And this excess is often the reason that people with these illnesses experience other complications like blindness and diabetes, for example. And it's no secret that obesity is a serious epidemic. 1 in 3 children and 2 out of 3 adults are either overweight or obese in the United States. And sugar's role in gaining weight is much more serious than just adding in some empty calories. Instead, it affects the hormones responsible for satiety and the feelings of satisfying your hunger. Therefore, it leads you to eat more and more. And I'm sure you can see the problem here, right? Knowing this alone strengthens the case that there is a 60% increased risk of obesity in children for every daily serving of sugar-sweetened beverage in our diets. And it's important to note that weight gain from sugar is often present in the abdominal area, right? This visceral fat breeds a high risk profile for many other diseases, some even life-threatening. Therefore, sugar is a leading factor in the rise in obesity, among many other serious health complications. So now we're going to look at liver health. Now, fructose, one of the main components in sugar, remember there is the glucose and the fructose. So fructose is metabolized by the liver. Now, this wouldn't be a problem if everyone minimized their sugar intake significantly and increased their daily physical activity. Typically, the fructose would be turned into glycogen and be stored in the liver for safekeeping until our bodies were ready to burn that energy reserve. However, if there is already an ample amount of glycogen in the liver, eating more sugar overloads it. And this extra is forced to be turned into fat. And this process is the beginning of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, among other complications. To take it even further, some studies have suggested that sugar can be just as damaging as alcohol is to the liver, even if you're at a healthy weight. But luckily, the liver can repair itself. But with continuous sugar consumption, it can never catch a break. There have been many misconceptions on what causes cardiovascular disease, the role of cholesterol and what foods help or harm our heart health. And sugar consumption is a leading contributor to the #1 killer of this world, which is heart disease. And studies have shown that consuming a large amount of fructose can cause a rise in bad cholesterol, the LDL, blood glucose, insulin levels, and abdominal obesity. And these findings were apparent in as little as 10 weeks. And note that all of these factors are major risk factors in developing heart disease. I have some studies that link sugar consumption with heart disease. So if you're interested in those, I can include those articles if you're interested in reading further. Sugar and versus immunity. We're going to talk a little bit about this tonight because our immune system right now with the coronavirus, and everyone is concerned about their immune systems. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this information to you tonight. Now, our immune system is responsible for defending our body against illness, right? And that's a big deal. Right now, especially, it's a big deal. So for your immune system to be compromised, you are putting yourself in danger of the pathogens that can make you very sick. And according to a study through Loma Linda University, 100 grams of sugar can make your white blood cells 40% less effective in killing germs. On top of already putting your body in a stressed and irritated state, as we are right now with this uncertainty, sugar directly affects your main line of defense against disease. And the most alarming part about this is that sugar's crippling effects stay present in your system for up to 5 hours after you eat it. So the other is about cancer. It's hard to believe that something that's so prevalent in our everyday diets can cause cancer. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it is true. Cancer is uncontrolled growth and the multiplication of cells. It is also one of the leading causes of death worldwide. So how is it related to sugar? So insulin is the connection. So insulin is one of the main hormones responsible for regulating the growth of the cells. And it's been concluded that having constantly elevated insulin levels can indeed contribute to cancer. So do you remember what I said about insulin and sugar? You know, consuming sugar raises the insulin levels. So now there's a considerable amount of evidence how that contributes to cancer risk and progression. I also have an article on this. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about this connection, let me know and I will send that one to you also. Sugar also affects our brain quite significantly. And studies have shown that sugar slows down the brain's function. It hinders new learning and decreases memory recall. There are also strong connections between high sugar intake and the prevalence of depression and anxiety. I mean, so what do you think of when you think of a sugar crash, right? It's irritability, decreased mood, brain fog, and fatigue. Now imagine that not going away, right? Foods rich in sugar disrupt our brain's neurotransmitters that work to stabilize our moods. However, if we're continually disrupting the function of those receptors, we no longer have the inherent control over our moods as we usually do. And according to I think his name is Dr. Karazian, he is a functional medicine expert and author. And he said there's a huge contribution to chronic depression with sugar. And I've got a YouTube video of how sugar affects your brain. And if you are interested in that, let me know, message me, and I will send that to you. Sometimes we use the word addiction lightly, you know, saying that you're addicted to your favorite food, for example. It isn't necessarily encompassing the real meaning of the word. So according to the American Society of Addiction Medicine, addiction is a primary chronic disease of brain reward, motivation, memory, and related circuitry. And dysfunction in these circuits leads to characteristic biological, psychological, social, and spiritual manifestations. And this is reflected in an individual pathologically pursuing reward, right? So a person pathologically pursuing reward and or relief by substance abuse or substance use and other behaviors. Addiction is characterized by an inability to consistently abstain, impairment in behavior control, craving, diminished recognition of significant problems with one's behaviors and interpersonal relationships, and a dysfunctional emotional response. Like other chronic diseases, addiction often involves cycles of relapse and remission. Without treatment or engagement in recovery activities, addiction is progressive and can result in disability or premature death. I know that's a really long definition, but it is important to really know what we're talking about when we say that sugar is addicting. Now, dopamine is a neurotransmitter responsible for controlling the reward and pleasure responses in our brain. When you eat a lot of sugar, a massive amount of dopamine is released in your brain. As you continue to consume sugar, the dopamine receptors become less powerful, making the response less effective. So more sugar is needed to create that same euphoric dopamine reaction. And this continues into a vicious cycle, much like what happens with drug addictions. A popular study proved the addictive qualities in sugar with rats and Oreos. The pleasure regions of these were previously drug addicted rats, okay? So the pleasure regions of those rats' brains were significantly more active when exposed to Oreo cookies compared to cocaine. That's crazy. That's crazy. So I've got more information on that study if you're interested in that one. A later study showed that the brains of people with food addiction reacted to sugar the same way as drug addicts react to drugs. And this is truly proof that sugar can take over our brain chemistry and deliberately make us crave and eat more of it. Now, while sugar is very obviously a negative contribution to our health and our lives, not all sugars are created equally. Some are much worse for us than others, and of course, vice versa. Up next, I'm going to be going through some sugars that should definitely be avoided as much as possible, as well as some recommended alternatives. So I'm curious, do you use any sugar alternatives? So this is to stay clear of, right? So if possible, avoid these products. The first one is aspartame. This is a chemical sweetener, and it's best known for its appearance in diet sodas. And some people can tolerate it well in the short term, while others report migraines and digestive distress. Regardless of the initial reaction, aspartame has been proved pretty dangerous in isolated situations. For example, the University of Liverpool conducted a study where aspartame was mixed with a common food coloring. The result was clear toxicity to brain cells. And additionally, researchers found that when aspartame breaks down, it creates formaldehyde. That is and formaldehyde is a well-known carcinogen. Another one is sucralose, and that's commonly known as the brand name Splenda. It's processed using chlorine. And researchers also, they're also finding out that the waste of those consuming this sugar, the sucralose or Splenda, can't be broken down in wastewater treatment plants. I mean, imagine what that means for inside of our bodies. Another one is high fructose corn syrup. And this one may be a bit more challenging to avoid because it's in almost everything. You have to read the label. And this sweetener plays a huge role in the fat buildup in the liver, in leptin resistance, and major weight gain. And a study even found that high fructose corn syrup is sometimes laced with mercury. Right? And mercury is a heavy metal that's linked to disease and developmental disorders like autism. So don't worry, I am going to suggest some safer alternatives. So I invite you to try these instead. One is stevia. Now, stevia sweetener is an extract made from the leaves of the stevia plant, and it has shown to help balance fasting blood sugar levels, cholesterol, insulin resistance, and blood pressure. However, it is important to pay attention to the source of stevia, because some brands include additives, so be sure always to check the label. Another one is coconut sugar. Now, coconut sugar is a natural sweetener. It's unrefined, and it still contains all of its vitamins and minerals. And it does not contribute to the strong fluctuations in blood sugar like other refined added sugars do. Another is raw honey. Honey has less fructose and provides other health benefits, including promoting heart health and fighting inflammation. But as always, too much of a good thing can be bad. So please keep in mind that these alternatives do still break down to glucose and fructose in your body, and all sweeteners should be used infrequently. Although it is ideal, it's not practical to plan to cut sugar out entirely. So as I mentioned before, it's hiding in nearly everything. However, finding healthier alternatives, practicing moderation, and being aware of the dangers is the best way to take action on the case against sugar. Now, I know that I have just shared a ton of information with you, and it may be a bit overwhelming, but that's okay. Changing your eating habits and taking control of your health requires a lot of effort, but it is incredibly rewarding. You'll experience a higher quality of life. You'll maintain a healthy weight. You'll have more natural energy and can prevent serious illness. And we talked about the immune system. There is so much value in kicking sugar to the curb and become the healthiest version of you. Now, if you feel like you need support on phasing sugar out of your diet, I am absolutely here to help. I want you to be healthy. I want your immune system to be strong. And I want you to be able to stay healthy and well during this time. And I will be posting tons of resources in my Facebook group, Healthy and Happy Living. Easy for you to say. The Facebook group, Healthy and Happy Living. And I invite you to find us on Facebook and come join in. So thank you for taking the time to join me. And here is my contact information. You can, my website's there, my Facebook is there, and there is the Facebook group, Healthy and Happy Living, and also my regular Facebook page, Deborah Loader, Living Well. Now, especially right now, we want to keep ourselves healthy and strong, including a strong immune system. And this is the time to really look at the amount of sugar that we're consuming and figure out ways to cut it down. If you need support with that, contact me, join our Facebook group, be part of the community, and we would love to have you. So if you have any further questions, you can post those in the chat. You can contact me any of the ways that are on this slide. I am always here to support you. So thank you again. And until next time, stay well and live well.